Hi, my name is Mike Grandinetti, and what I'd like to do for the next 20 minutes is talk about how we can harness artificial intelligence to create a better world. Now, I'm sure most of you in the room have seen this graphic many times. If you don't know what this is from 2015, the United Nations, very aware of some of the critical and existential crises that we're facing in the world, defined these 17 sustainable development themes. And underlying these themes are 169 targets or goals. The thought process was that over a 15-year period from 2015 to 2030, the world would mobilize to address most or all of these targets. And the unfortunate truth is we are nowhere close to achieving any of them. If you look at people who study this for a living, Nobel laureates and economists and other subject matter experts, the hard truth is most of the goals will not be accomplished until 2080. 2080, 55 years from now, at current course and speed. And other goals at this point show no promise of being fulfilled. I don't think it takes a lot of imagination to consider what our world might look like in 2080 if we have not made significant progress against most, if not all, of these goals. It's a world I don't want to live in, and I doubt you would as well. Okay? And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about how, as a career entrepreneur, innovator, and change maker, I have seen and brought to market many next-generation technologies that have allowed us to solve problems that were previously thought unsolvable. So I would like us to step back and say, can we reimagine? Can we reframe some of these problems? And can we bring a far more powerful approach to solving these problems? And so out of these 17 themes, I wanted to choose just one in order to kind of create this focal point, because if you can do it for one, you can do it for all. And I chose SDG 3, health and well-being, one, because I really believe all of us care deeply about our own health and the health of our friends and loved ones, right? It's just a topic that is of great interest to all of us. Now, what I want to make clear, though, is I didn't choose this specific theme because it is a layup, just the opposite. We have been moving closer and closer to a global health crisis long before the COVID-19 pandemic showed up on our doorstep, and it's only continued to get worse. What you may or may not know is that every year about 1.5 million people die from superbugs. These are bacteria or viruses that are now completely resistant to antibiotics. 1 in 8 people on the planet today are medically obese. You can imagine the number of consequences that people suffer in terms of heart disease and diabetes and so many other challenges that come with that level of being unwell. We're seeing a dramatic rise in the number of cases of cancer in the cohort between the ages of 19 and 49. We used to think of cancer as an older person's disease. That is no longer the case. Dramatic increases in gastrointestinal cancer, and the scourge of breast cancer continues unabated. And while all of this is happening, our medical doctors are suffering from depression. They're suffering from burnout. They are leaving the profession at record rates. I happen to live in Boston, so I have the benefit of going to Mass General Hospital, which is affiliated with Harvard Medical School, right? It's a very prestigious research hospital. And we're seeing doctors from this institution going on strike. We're seeing doctors from the National Institutes of Health in the UK going on strike. Did you ever imagine a day in your life where medical doctors would be going on strike? And so what's happening is they're leaving the profession, And I'm sure many of you in the room know of challenges in getting to your own primary care physician. Some of you may not even have a primary care physician, or you're waiting many months for an appointment and you're using urgent care. And of course, we have the highest expenses in the world when it comes to healthcare, and they continue to explode out of the gate. And so I'm very much of the belief of someone who has been working with AI for 25 years, that it is very much like a Swiss Army knife on steroids. It has an infinite number of attachments and tools that can solve just a vast multitude of problems that were unsolvable before, and at rates of speed that I will show you are truly stunning. Now, let's be clear. The media has done a remarkable job of instilling the fear of God into many people about the existential threats of AI. And I want to say that a lot of that is completely uninformed, and a lot of it is driven to get advertising and clicks. And I'm not here to say that there aren't going to be consequences. Every technology has consequences. But I want to make it abundantly clear that no technology is inherently good or bad. Inherently is only as good as the values and the intentions of the people that are deploying that technology. And so earlier this week, I moderated a debate at MIT on the ethics of AI. And I would want you to know that there are many, many regulators and policymakers and subject matter experts that are very focused on creating guardrails and boundaries and policies and frameworks to manage the downside. As leaders in this room, we should think about how do we harness the upside of AI to drive the kind of outcomes that we all want to see happen in the world. And so in the short time that I have, I want to offer 4 illustrative proof points so that you can get a sense of how AI is solving what were considered to be intractable problems in the healthcare world, and think about how we might extrapolate that into some of the other SDGs that I identified. Now, at the very heart of the medical system, of course, is the medical doctor. And as you can see in this image that was created, the medical doctor is under incredible duress. One of the unintended consequences of the mass adoption of electronic health records is that medical doctors have become note takers. They're spending 3 to 4 hours a day entering notes into these health systems, okay? And a lot of that time is happening when they're supposed to be home and recuperating and getting ready for the next day of work. So there's an insane amount of pressure on them. One of the things that we hear about with these medical doctors that I hear, I have many former medical doctors in my classes these days. They've given up on medicine, even though that was their dream as a young boy or young girl. And they obviously went through the challenge and the rigor of going through a 7-year apprenticeship and residency, right? So one of my former students, Omar from Egypt, said, Mike, for every hour I spend in the operating room, I spend 4 hours writing paperwork. Okay? What I hear from many of my students is, I feel like I'm a cog in the industrial insurance complex. I'm doing battle with insurance companies all day long, and I'm just tired and I can't do it anymore. And so here's something that you probably all know. When a medical doctor is sworn in, they take the Hippocratic Oath. And the Hippocratic Oath is first, do no harm. Unfortunately, when you are burned out and running from one appointment to the next, you will make mistakes, and they're making mistakes. 800,000 people either die or are seriously harmed every year because of medical errors. Another 4,000 people are harmed or die every year because of surgical errors. And so if we don't get to the root cause of this crisis, we're never going to be able to figure out how to solve it. And so the question that I ask is, how do we ease the pain of our caretakers, our healthcare workers, so that they can in turn be healthy enough to ease our pain? And so one way is with a AI-based physician's assistant. I am not in any way advocating that this is going to replace the doctor, but what I am advocating, because I've seen it in different hospitals and different studies, is it's already bringing incredible relief to a lot of the administrative and the cognitive burdens on the shoulders of medical doctors, and it's already showing incredible promise in a lot of different clinical interventions as well. So we all know that we go to a medical doctor today. It feels like a drive-by in many cases. The doctor is racing with their hair on fire from one appointment to the next, and they often sit at a bench and they're looking into an electronic medical record, and they're very quickly trying to assimilate, what is the patient's history? What do I need to know? How can I have the most impact in the least amount of time? And that's a very unsatisfying experience for us, obviously, okay? And so let me tell you how AI can help. One is you can now use AI to summarize what could be a 40 or 50 or 60-page medical history. And you could very quickly tease out the most important points so that now you're just reading a summary of what you need to know. The second thing is, rather than stare into the computer screen and have to type the notes, the physician can actually sit and look you in the eye, which has tremendous health benefits. And that entire discussion, if you give permission, is recorded. It's recorded as a voice file, and generative AI will then convert it into a text file, and it will automatically upload that text file into the patient's electronic medical record. And you can print out that summary of that visit in real time and give it to the patient on their way home. With the interoperability of electronic medical records, you're now able to use AI to basically crawl through hundreds of thousands or millions of other patients' records so that the medical professional can see, are there patients like this, suffering from symptoms like this? And you can get to a much quicker diagnostic, and you can get to a much quicker regimen for health. So that's proof point number one. And by the way, this new technology is called an ambient scribe. There are a number of companies that have brought it to market, and the reaction from doctors has been incredibly positive, right? They're getting back up to 20 to 30 or more hours a week of their time so that they can take care of their own health, they can keep up with their medical records, right? And they come to the office each day renewed and refreshed. Now, a second area of great promise is now we start to move away from the administrative side to the clinical side. And this is in the area of preventative health. And we all pay a lot of lip service to preventative health in the United States, right? We talk about this all the time, but we never seem to get there, right? We seem to be much more about, hey, I've got a symptom, I'm going to go to the doctor, and hopefully I'm going to get there in time that if there is something serious, we'll be able to deal with it. Well, it turns out that the Mayo Clinic specifically, right, world-renowned institution, incredibly technology forward, is doing a lot of work with a lot of different companies to bring forward preventative AI solutions. So for example, in the United States, I'm sure all of us are no more than 1 degree of separation from someone with diabetes. And it turns out 40% of Americans, 40%, have prediabetes. 80% don't know it. And so if you don't know it, you're going to continue to maintain the same habits that are going to eventually push you over the threshold. And so a lot of these signals are hiding in plain sight. And so there's a new company called Lucem, and what Lucem is able to do, it is able to detect prediabetes years before it actually materializes into diabetes. There's another AI-based company that they're working with called Omumana. And Omumana is able to look at a person's heart pump, the thing that pumps blood and oxygen through your body. And about 2.5% of all Americans have a weak heart pump. They just don't know it. And the only time they figure it out is when they wind up having a rupture of their heart pump. Okay, and you can imagine how catastrophic that is. So this is another example of something that is hiding in plain sight. And they're able to detect, just by looking at medical records, up to 2 years in advance, whether someone is on track to have a heart pump rupture. Okay, and I can go on and on, but we don't have time. Okay, so proof point number 2, preventative medicine. Proof point number 3 comes around to accurate diagnostics. So when we go back and refresh what I talked about earlier, the number of instances of cancer. okay? And we've seen a lot of young people just die far too young from colon cancer, breast cancer, stomach cancer. And one of the challenges, of course, is when you have overworked doctors and overworked radiologists, right? They're using their own perception as they look at these anomalies, these polyps, these cysts, these lesions in tissues and in organs. And they miss a lot of them. They miss a darn lot of them. And so we're already seeing a 50 to 75% reduction in the number of times that these abnormalities are missed, right? Dramatically reducing the odds that something is still lingering in your system that is cancerous and malignant and could spread. Okay, and so this is something that if you are, in fact, going through some kind of diagnostic for this, you should insist that they're using artificial intelligence as a way to bring a almost foolproof ability to detect these things. And then let's now talk about drug discovery. You may not know this, but we have at any given time, at least in the United States, about 250 different pharmaceuticals where we are very short. We're short on diabetes drugs. We're short on asthma medication. We're short on many different kinds of pharmaceuticals, okay? One of the pharmaceuticals that we're short on is effective antibiotics. And so on the right-hand side, we see Dr. Jim Collins. He is considered the father of synthetic biology, and he practices his craft at MIT. And he's been fighting the good fight, trying to find new compounds, new effective forms of antibiotic that will fight tuberculosis, will address MRSA and a lot of these other superbugs. And it has been very slow going, not without effort, not without funding. And so about a year and a half ago, he partners with another AI professor, Dr. Regina Arziali, who is an AI machine learning specialist. And their collaboration has been nothing short of stunning. So they decide they're going to procure a library from this joint Harvard Medical School, MIT research lab called the Broad Institute. And they procure a library of 140 million chemical compounds. It's a staggering number. And if you try to analyze all of those compounds using the prior kinds of methodologies, it would take you decades. By using deep learning and neural networks, it took them 3 days. 3 days. Just savor that for a second, okay? And in 3 days, they were able to identify a compound that will be effective against MRSA. And they've identified other compounds that will be effective against tuberculosis, which, by the way, in history, tuberculosis is the most deadly disease we have ever faced as a human race. Over 1 billion people have died of tuberculosis. And it's on track to kill 10 million people a year in the next 10 years if we don't do something about it. So I hope what I've shown you in the last little while are 4 applied proof points of how AI is addressing critical problems that are at the heart of this global health crisis. And so we have come full circle, okay? And what I hope I have convinced you of is that if we take the path to the left, if we continue on the same course at the same speed, doing the same things, we will fail spectacularly. To be afraid of AI, to not harness this gift that was provided to us, to me would be irrational. And so my strong conviction is that for us to meet the moment, for us to really bring everything that we have available to us to address these 17 critical sustainable development themes and all of the underlying targets, we need to level up our game. And so what does that mean for us in the room? It means all hands on deck, right? I gave a talk yesterday in the room about the fact that we all have agency, and we do. For better or worse, the United Nations has proven itself to be ineffective decade after decade, okay? And we see that all too regularly today. We know that the U.S. government itself, the best thing they can do is prevent shutting themselves down during a budget crisis. That's the biggest achievement that we can expect from them anytime soon. And so if not us, then who? If we do not provide some level of leadership, bring some level of energy, there is no hope, okay? And so what I would recommend that we all do, for those of us who are not aware of this graphic, and of course in this room, many of you are educators and you care deeply about education. Is there one theme that resonates with you, that makes your heart beat faster? Something where you think you can really contribute, where you can make a difference? And start to do your research, just like in this incredibly collegial group that we've brought together here in Providence over the last few days. Find community, find your tribe. Think about how you can do things together to make a difference. But if you do not do it with your hands tied behind your back. Give yourself the benefit of the capabilities that are now laying in front of us. And that is, yes, generative AI, okay? Now, I travel a lot. I teach a lot of exec ed courses on AI. I'm very deeply involved in it in business. And what I would say is this: there is a huge knowing-doing gap. Why is that? AI is a phrase that intimidates people. There's this belief that you have to be a data scientist, you have to be a machine learning engineer, you have to learn how to write code. And that was the case until November of 2023. And then this new thing burst onto the scene that you've all heard of, called ChatGPT. And what we know is you no longer need to be technical. If you can speak or type, you can engage with these tools. These tools are the most powerful tools I've ever seen. They're incredibly accessible, they're intuitive, and oh, by the way, they're free, okay? So what does that mean? What that means for you as I get ready to wrap up is I'm gonna ask you all to think about how you can think about what the medical doctors are experiencing. How do you learn about these tools? How do you roll up your sleeves? How do you give yourself extra 10, 15 hours a week? I'm in middle age now, and I'm more productive today than I have ever been in my life, okay? And let me tell you, I am stunned by what I can get done, okay? And I hope that you all will take the opportunity to bring extra productivity to your lives, create extra time in your lives. And how do you spend that time? Well, you're gonna spend it by, of course, I hope, taking care of your health, spending time with family, learning a new language or an instrument or picking up a new hobby. But I also hope that you will take some of that time and give it back to the planet. And if that's an outcome that even one of you has done, then I will feel like this was a worthwhile time. Thank you all very much. Thank you. By the way, I am teaching a course at Babson on AI. It's a virtual course. It starts in June. It'll be 3 Wednesdays in June. It will be very experiential. I'd love to see some of you in the course, so here is the QR code for that course. Thank you all. Yes? What's that? I'll take one question, but I'm sure that Noel is going to say one and only one. That more people are not using it to make the world a better place. There is no such thing as HAL. HAL is not coming for us anytime soon, okay? There's a lot of very smart people working on the downside risks, okay? I'm afraid the media is going to kill the baby in the cradle. That's my biggest worry, okay? Thank you.